My videos and blog articles about how to insult and humiliate absolutists, narcissists, Trumpists are always my most popular. And I'm grateful for that. Views are my muse, after all. But at the same time, I want to remind you, for me, it's repertoire, not recipe. I don't think there's a single formula. So there are times when I want to assert, and that includes insulting and humiliating. There's times when I want to accommodate, which would include, let's say, street epistemology, asking questions, trying to connect with the person. And there's also times to leave. As I mentioned in the last video, never fight with a pig, you'll just get dirty, and the pig likes it. No, you can't say never about that. Sometimes you have to fight a pig and you will get dirty. And so a lot of my work is also on how to feel clean in that dirty work we sometimes have to do. It includes all sorts of techniques, but I want to talk about one today I call clone to own. You've probably seen it used before, especially if you study the great stand-up comedians and people like Cliff Cash or Sacha Baron Cohen. What it means is you parody right on the edge of parody, to where you confuse the absolutist, the Trumpist, or someone like that, with a response that takes what they're saying and runs with it. Yesterday, I coined the term Liekido for it. It's Aikido, but with lies. They're lying at you. They're telling you that they believe this stuff. I don't think they believe it at all. I think they feel it. I refuse to say a Trumpist thinks or a Trumpist believes, because I haven't seen that in their behavior. But it's become an increasingly useful technique for me as I've begun to go onto the pro-Trump sites. And what I'm doing there, I'm not trying to speak truth to power. I don't want to moralize at them. A lot of people have responded by saying, yeah, just call them pedophiles. Have you noticed that doesn't work with them? Nothing works with them. That's the challenge we're dealing with. These are people with one goal, to make sure nothing works with them. That's the definition of absolute. Absolute is like absolution. It's complete insulation from any kind of influence. It originally meant dissolved away from all influences, like absolute zero in physics. So their sole goal is to make sure nothing works. So I take that to heart, and I want to get better at finding something that works better. Is it going to work perfectly? No. Repertoire, not recipe, and we've got to stretch. Trump has never been cut to his face since he came down the escalator in 2015. Not once has he been cut and made to bleed. And his fans, because I study them closely, these fans see him, therefore, as an eternal winner, as a guy with an eternal winning streak. And they feel like badass street fighters for the most namby-pamby kindergarten you're a poopy butt kind of insults. Their insults are lame. Why then do they get to feel like these tough thug street fighters? Because we suck at street fighting. And one of the main reasons we suck at street fighting is that we're ambivalent about doing that. I also have gotten plenty of comments that say, no, you shouldn't try to insult them. My dad called that taking refuge in pious failure. I'm not interested in that. I actually have to make some headway with these folks, and so I have to get tougher at the aggressive side of my work. I have to get better at cutting them, at hurting them where it hurts. That's the goal with this work, and Clone to Own is a really interesting way to do this. So you're going to act like them. You're going to take it to an extreme. You're going to take it further than they've taken it, but you're not going to do it sarcastically. It's not parody. It's you're trying to confuse them. You're trying to destabilize them to where they cannot tell whether you're serious or not. In a way, you're giving them exactly what they dream in their foolish naivete will result, is that people will say, wow, you really changed my mind. I woke up to Trumpism. Trumpism is the most woke, broke joke of a movement this country has ever seen. Not in terms of what the left's lifestyle brand says is woke. No, woke meaning born again, taken the red pill, seen the light, solved reality, left Plato's cave. Suddenly you're the authority on everything, and your only goal is to tutor those who are benighted, do not understand yet. So when you Clone to Own, what you're doing is you're playing it right on the edge. You're giving them exactly what they have craved in their needy, desperate, pathetic craving of self-confidence. Absolution is total, eternal self-confidence, unconditional self-confidence. That's all that's going on with Trumpists. They don't care about politics. They just have bought into a system where they feel like they are eternally right, righteous, and mighty, which is all that Trump ran on. So what you're doing is whatever they say, you're not actually paying attention to the content, and you are not speaking truth to power. No, what you're doing is you're playing right into it with an Aikido move. You take their thrust and you pull them and destabilize them. Sacha Baron Cohen is a master of this stuff. And as he says, whenever someone starts to suspect that he is playing with them, toying with them, making fun of them, he doubles down. And you got to be able to do that too. So for example, when I clone to own and they say, are you making fun of me? My response is, how could you think that? I am right with you. Why are you so sensitive? And then I'll double down and say again, as if I mean it, whatever they said, taken just further than they assume anybody would want to take it. I take it to its logical, ad absurdum, illogical extreme. So that's a technique you can employ, but to employ it, you have to be comfortable with that. You have to be over the need to prove yourself to these people. You do not. Keep your own counsel on whose counsel to keep. And don't try to counsel them. They are not interested in counsel. They have already pre-dismissed you for anything you say if you disagree with them. They simply, part of their absolution is the sense that anyone who disagrees with them is an unpatriotic fool, doesn't deserve to be listened to. So the only way to penetrate with someone who's gone that far into their glotaholic addiction is to play as if you are them and confuse them about whether you are with them or not. It's mockery, but it's right on the edge. If it gets into parody, then you're trying to prove yourself to them. You're trying to prove you're more virtuous than them. That is never going to work with these guys. For example, I hear from all sorts of people who say, well, you just got to call him a pedophile or a pedophile supporter. No, that doesn't work. Have you noticed that doesn't work? They dismiss it any number of easy ways. These are people who will say anything to pretend they're always right, righteous, and mighty. So to clone to own, great strategy. Cliff Cash uses it. He calls it outdumbing them. It's a perfect technique for this kind of situation. Here's an example of clone to own or outdumbing them. You go on to any pro-Trump social media site and you post something as though you are one of them, saying, look what those stupid, mean, anti-Trump people are saying about us. They're so mean and stupid. And you add a couple of misspellings and you say something like yay MAGA or whatever. And you basically give them a reflection of how they look to other people, but you do it as though you are one of them and are furious that they are insulting us this way. Street epistemology works elsewhere. I don't find that it works very well with Trumpists because they don't want to engage. They are not curious. I think of them as, it's like wearing mirrored sunglasses. So what's interesting about mirrored sunglasses is that it kind of demands introspection of whoever's looking at you. They're looking in the mirror. But you don't have to have any introspection to wear them. In fact, you get to hide your eyes. So you get to hide your eyes and everybody else has to see themselves. That's what they want. Anybody who disagrees with them needs to look in the mirror. They always say that to me. The Trumpists always say that if I confront them directly rather than clone to own, they always come back with, you're projecting, you really ought to take a good look at yourself. They have no interest in looking at themselves because that would only confuse them. They want the absoluteness, the absolute self-confidence they've got, and they will get it by any means possible. They're addicted to gloating. They're glotaholics. Introspection is kryptonite to people who are trying to play Superman. So they don't want to do that at all. And yet, when you clone to own, when you say what they say, and say, amen, you are so right. You changed my mind about this. I thought other things before, but you really turned me around on this. And why even allow Democrats? They're not true Americans. You double down and keep doubling down, but you do it on the edge to destabilize them, to confuse them about whether you're mocking them or not. Don't mock them in a way that they can tell is mockery. Confuse them instead. Again, you've got to get over your need to prove yourself to them. You don't. When they will scold you all day and night for anything, they'll pull out their butts any moralizing excuse for why you're wrong and they're right. Don't try to prove yourself to them. So I call it Liekido because it's basically a lie for a lie. Now you might say a lie for a lie leaves the whole world lying, just as an eye for an eye can leave the whole world blind. But remember, that's only half true. It doesn't always leave the whole world blind. And besides, you're keeping straight on what you really believe. You're not believing your own lies. You're keeping your own counsel on that. But you are confusing them by showing them that you can do what they do too, that you could join them. And in a way, it exposes them. It's a little dose of introspection, that kryptonite that they are at great pains to avoid. Sometimes we do gouge eyes. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed that for 3.8 billion years, living beings have been gouging each other? Have you noticed that? Or do you want to live in this world where you can imagine everybody living in harmony, and therefore that's the world you're going to expect? That doesn't work. Jesus is teaching about turning the other cheek. Yeah, it's great lip service. Everybody will claim that they'll do that. But when someone has hit you as hard as the Trumpists have, no, you don't keep turning your other cheek. You can't, you won't, and you shouldn't. And the same is true for an eye for an eye. If your daughter's eye was gouged out, you'd want some kind of retaliation, if only to impose some consequences so that people don't go around gouging eyes. So we did fight World War II. We kind of had to, right? So you don't want to start wars, but sometimes you have to engage in them. Sometimes you have to fight with a pig. You will get dirty. The pig will like it. You got to get better at this dirty, challenging work. Or else the Trumpists will continue to strut like they are super badass street fighters because we're so lame at it. You got to get over this need to feel like you're somehow pure. It works in some situations. You can exemplify virtue and other people will copy it, but that's not what's going on with the Trumpists. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile. There are people you can give an inch and they'll give an inch back. There are people you give an inch and they'll take a mile. So you don't just turn the other cheek with psychopaths, sociopaths, or absolutists, or a-holes, or narcissists. You know that by now. You've had 10 years of Trumpism and an entire life of dealing with people, some of whom are cooperative and give and take, and some are just going to mooch and rob and steal. You may have come from a culture the way I did, where you didn't end up dealing with many of those robbers. But you got to recognize in the real world, overall, there will be those. And you've got to get over your need to virtue signal at them. Don't get distracted by that. You have to get more cutthroat. You have to add that to your repertoire, and it will serve you for the rest of your life. Whatever happens with the Trumpists, I'm not actually interested in their policy because they aren't. I don't want to meet them in their policy. I want to imitate them in their policy claims because that's a way to clone to own. But I don't actually think it's about politics for them at all. It's basically masturbation for them. It's basically a public circle jerk vanity project in the public square, and I'm trying to do something about it because the public square needs a greater degree of civility. And yet, paradoxically, to create greater civility, you have to be able to trick and manipulate these people, or else we're sunk. So, as always, I've got this study group that meets on every other Sunday morning at 9 o'clock California time. It's free. Anybody can join. A bunch of people joined off the last video. We talk about repertoire, not recipe, the variety of things you need to be able to do when you're being cornered more and more by someone taking up all the space they can, the way the Trumpists do. We are dealing with that challenge because it's the biggest challenge I think we face. As I mentioned in the last video, I've worked on all sorts of other issues, climate change, nukes, that sort of thing. And then I came to the realization, no, we can't make progress on that as long as tyrants prevail. So that's why I make these videos. That's why I'm interested in the overall field I call psychoproctology, a light name for a serious subject, dead serious subject. You cannot take yourself too seriously when you do this work. When people introduce me as an expert on a-holes, I say I am not an expert, I'm a specialist. The most dangerous people in the world consider themselves experts on who's an a-hole. I don't get to do that. But psychoproctology is my game. In a lot of these videos, it's about half of what I do with my research and writing and presenting. It's the diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of absolutism. That's what it is. And this is about the treatment, but also the prevention. I'll give you an example of the prevention and how it played out in an interesting conversation I had years ago. Probably the first time I noticed the clone to own strategy was effective. I happened to be friends with this guru guy, Ram Dass. He was introduced to me by someone, and we had conversations. And I would also go to him when I was feeling some despair. And I went to him and I talked about how I wanted to be a good guy. This was before I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I was in my late 30s. I was a real late bloomer. And he said to me, yeah, you're a really nice guy. You're a really good person, aren't you? And he said it right on the edge. And because we were interacting as friends, it wasn't taken as a threat. And I countered with a clone to own a little later. He was talking about something, and I said, yes, but is there room at the top for more nobodies like you? And we both had a good laugh about it. The two comments are both clone to own. There's all sorts of techniques, and you have to be able to mix and match them. Most of my interactions are going to be a combination of accommodation, assertion, and space-taking. And so there's a way in which I do turn the other cheek with Trumpists, in that I'm always trying to reach them human to human. Yesterday I came up with the acronym HEYA, H-A-Y-A, human as you are. That's where I want to meet these people. I'm not trying to knock them off their high horse so I can mount the steed in their stead. I'm trying to figure out how to be humans with each other. And at core, if I am going to be direct with them, I will give them a direct observation. My opinion, take it or leave it for what it's worth. This is what you're doing. And I never talk politics or morality. I say you are jerking off in a vanity project. And I have them too. I just don't do it in a public square where I turn government, basic infrastructure, into my personal vanity project. That's my only message to them. Self-love is important. We all need it. But get a room, don't let it go to your head, zip up after, and do not turn basic infrastructure into your circle jerk vanity project. So if you're interested in that study group, come join us. Drop in, drop out. It doesn't matter. I'm not trying to sell you on anything. It's just people trying to figure out better ways to be more effective in hitting Trumpists where it hurts, or hitting any kind of narcissist, whether it be left, right, political, religious, atheist, none of that matters. It's how do you deal with people? How do you humbly humble and or humiliate humans who will say or do anything to avoid human humility? HEYA, human as you are. See you next time. And thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing, and thanks for commenting. It's where I get the next ideas, and I respond back as much as I can. Thanks for getting in touch.